Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. Can you guys hear us now? We're not sure what the audio issue is, but it's showing that it's working on our end. Are we good? Let us know if we're good here on the live stream. Good old live live streaming, having fun issues.
What's that one bar on the soundboard that is
This one? That's
Okay.
the back. Are we good? Can we get confirmation?
I hear a
Yay!
yay from Scott. I'm
Sweet.
hoping that's about our audio.
Is cool.
Okay,
The audio
cool.
is working. Cool.
We don't know, guys.
I don't know what's with the audio.
We don't think it's an us issue.
We
'Cause
literally
don't
changed
change our
nothing.
settings. So
Yeah. I don't know
yeah,
what the issue is.
sorry about that.
Anyways, that's embarrassing. Let's just start over. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. This is an emergency CarCast thingamajig, talking about USC and the sacking of defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. This came at 12:25 p.m. We got an email, a press release that says USC head coach Lincoln Riley announced today, November 5th, that defensive coordinator Alex Grinch has been relieved of his duties. Defensive line coach Sean Nua and inside linebackers coach / associate head coach for defense Brian Odom will serve as interim co-defensive coordinators for the remainder of the season. Additionally, defensive analyst Taylor Mays has been elevated to an on-field assistant coach and will work with the safeties. Alicia, your thoughts? Go.
I am honestly surprised, but in a good way. I did not think, and I said this on the podcast, I said this on Twitter, I did not think that USC would fire Alex Grinch until the end of the season, just based on the way that Lincoln Riley was talking, based on what we've talked about in the past, that firing your coordinator a lot of times is in midseason, a lot of times doesn't do you any good. It doesn't help you in terms of the product that you're putting on the field. But as I said last night in the CarCast, it had gotten to a point of being untenable. You could not persist with the same voice in that room. You could not ask the players to play for a coach who is getting his game plans wrong, his in-game adjustments wrong, his play calling wrong, his personnel decisions wrong. You set a bad example for your program if you allow that to slide without consequence. And the thing that really, not long before this news came out, Ryan Karchi posted a tweet where he pointed out the ranks of USC's defense: 124th in scoring defense, 122nd in total defense, 120th in rush defense, 107th in pass defense, 128th in 10 plus yards allowed, 132 in plays of 10 plus yards. For reference, there are 133 FBS teams.
Yeah.
Those numbers alone prove that you had to move. You had to move on. You had to make a move that would prove to your players, your donors, your fans, your everybody, that you take this seriously and that you are not going to allow this kind of performance to continue. It had to happen. I'm glad they didn't wait any longer. They waited too long as it was.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a little bit of hindsight, but not completely. We talked about it at the time. SC should have done this after the Cotton Bowl, right? Like,
Yeah.
That should have been the thing. I guess realistically, you could have said it could have happened at the end of the regular season last year, after the Utah game. But I can understand why it wasn't. And we talked about it at the time that, like, the Cotton Bowl was so bad that was absolutely a moment in which they could have made the change. Lincoln Riley decided not to. He decided to run it back, and that is going to end up being a colossal decision that sort of, might end up haunting his legacy a little bit, at least for now, until SC can sort of right the ship with a better defensive coordinator that changes the defense around. Luckily, we talked about this last night after the Washington game. SC's offense is so good that it's not crazy to say that you go make a defensive coordinator hire, and even if you're just mediocre on defense, this team is 9-1 right now. This team is in the national discussion for the playoff, all those things with a
Sure.
mediocre
Where they
defense.
were last year,
Yeah,
essentially. There's no reason you couldn't be there.
yeah, you have a better than mediocre and even not elite defense, and this is a team that's capable of winning a national championship. You got to go out and find those guys. You got to go out and find the dude who's going to take you to that level, whether it's a Jim Leonard or Dave Aranda, if he ends up getting fired at Baylor as the season ends. Whoever it is, you got to go out and find that guy, because you can't. I'm looking at the NCAA stat rankings right now. There's way too many 3 digits here. It's insane how many hundred and somethings. And this was the case last year too.
Every week we put together a visual element for our preview podcast. It's essentially a slideshow where I go in and I update the rankings and I put the rankings for USC's opponent.
Yeah.
And early-ish on in the season, I was having an issue with sizing of the text boxes, that I kept having to expand the text boxes because they were designed to have, like, only so many characters. And when you have 132nd,
Yeah.
and the number in there is 456.6, like, it was just, it expanded to a point where that was, to me, a visual symbol every single week as I'm putting this together.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this defense is bad. And wow, this defense getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it is absolutely it was seemingly getting worse as it went on. I was looking at it yesterday, last night before I went to sleep. I was looking, we talked about how the defense earlier in the year was at least making negative plays. They were forcing tackles, right? Tackles for loss. SC that has fallen off so dramatically. SC still leads the conference in tackles for loss. It's all because they started so hot. SC, you'd look at it, where's the split stats here? Tackles for loss per game in August, 9.8. Sorry, August and September, 9.8. In October, that drops down to just 5. They had 3 last night. Jamil Muhammad leads USC in sacks. He has 6 sacks. He has not had a sack in the last 4 games. SC is 3-4 in that stretch, with the one win being a 1-point win over Cal on the road in Berkeley. So it's, once SC stopped making the negative plays on defense, the entire bottom fell out of everything else. And they were giving up, big plays and points to Colorado, and they had their moments against ASU before that. So even when they were still making the negative plays, they were having those bad moments. But really, it just completely compounded in the last 4 games or so, and that's when the losses came. And we looked at it last year. This sort of happened last year, where the first 6 games, SC was very good in generating negative plays, and they were very good, in just managing games on defense. We talked about mid-game adjustments. SC was very good against Fresno State and Arizona State in the early part of the season to make adjustments, and then all of a sudden that just vanished, and the season ended up where they give up 43 points to Utah on the road. They nearly blow a game to Arizona because of defensive issues, and then Cal because of defensive issues last year. And then this year just absolutely doubles down on it. They were in a position where the last 2 years we could sit here and say, well, they can't be worse than last year. Last year we said they couldn't be worse than 2021, and arguably they were. And this year they couldn't be worse than last year, and arguably they are.
Yeah.
And I don't even think arguably at this point. I think that the defense just is worse than last year. And, part of that is because they're facing a tougher schedule. But, look at the UCLA game last year where they allowed 49 points to UCLA. They made stops in that game. They didn't make any stops last night.
No.
Look at the Cal game last week. They at least made stops and still allowed 49 points. They did not make stops last night at all. So, Different sort of game, different number of drives. Obviously, Washington is led by probably the Heisman favorite in Michael Penix, but it was a one-dimensional team. We all knew it. A team that wasn't willing to run the football, and yet they were to the tune of 300 yards or whatever it was last night. And you can't have that. You absolutely cannot have that. So, Alicia, going forward, where do you go? What do you think this bodes for the remainder of the season? USC has to play Oregon in 6 days, 7:30 p.m. on Fox on Saturday night. What's your early thoughts there?
Well, as we've always said, the problem with a midseason coordinator fire or a midseason firing in general is that it usually doesn't result in good things.
Yeah.
You might get a small reaction from the players. You might having something different, having a different voice running the show, might result in a slight positive uptick at best, but you can only expect a slight positive uptick at best, and that's not the most likely outcome either way. So I don't know that this makes a huge difference in terms of USC's ability to win the next two games. I think you go into the Oregon game a 17-point underdog, and for good reason. And I don't know that the USC defense, I don't think you should go in expecting the USC defense to be significantly better. I think you can go in hoping that they might be slightly better, have a slightly different reaction, and maybe throw something at Oregon that they can't possibly expect because it's someone different running the show. I think the most demoralizing thing here is that you look at giving co-DC status to guys like Sean Nua and Brian Odom. Well, what's the worst position group on defense this season? It's the linebackers, the inside linebackers, who Brian Odom is responsible for.
Yeah.
And what position group has been, as you pointed out, part of the reason USC hasn't been able to um, win in the trenches as consistently as they need to
Mm-hmm.
outside of Bear Alexander? Well, it's Sean Nua's defensive group. So there was no savior on this staff who was going to magically fix things.
Yeah.
I think Taylor May's coming in as now taking full control of the safeties. Could be interesting. Could be interesting to see how Kalen Bullock in particular responds to this. But there's only so much you can fix.
I don't know that much changes stuff. It's
No.
Yeah, he can be an on-field coach during practice or whatever, but like it's not like he's not working with these guys just in general. Not like he doesn't have some sort of input if he could. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
by the way, I looked it up in 2018 when Lincoln Riley fired Mike Stoops as Oklahoma's defensive coordinator. 14 games Oklahoma played that year, 6 with Mike Stoops, and then the last 8 were with Ruffin McNeil as the interim defensive coordinator. Under Mike Stoops, they averaged 27.3 points against. After the firing, that bumped up to 37.7. So they allowed 10 more points per game after the firing. So take that for what it's worth.
The difference,
so
the
the
obvious
point is like,
difference being that firing was after they gave up 48 points to Texas, but in
yeah,
all of the previous games they had given up 33 to Baylor and then sort of 20s here and there. And
mhm.
USC's defense is just so much more catastrophic
it
than that.
it
Like it's
is
hard to get too much worse than 52
absolutely.
points and 570 yards.
Yeah, you look at SC's average over the last several weeks, and SC's been a 40 something point defense at this point, right? 52 last night, 49 the week before, 34, 48, even though that 48 is kind of BS against Notre Dame. We've talked about that before, but
Mhm.
it doesn't help. It doesn't help that number's there, right? Like the Arizona game as the 41, even though it came in overtime, doesn't help. That number exists, right? Like So yeah, I don't expect great things for SC going on the road this week, up in Autzen against Oregon. But if nothing else, this at least calms the ire of the fan base, of the boosters, of all those things, which I think is important. Like you made the point last night in our CarCast after the Washington game. That's an important thing in terms of trying to drum up NIL money.
Yeah.
So that in itself is an important part to sort of get a 2 week head start before you can really start going to work there to see who the defensive coordinator is versus making the decision after the UCLA game, for instance. Orcliffe in the chat says it's hard to give up more points. Maybe you don't get the forced turnovers that SC has had been able to snag. Yeah, it's I don't expect that the big uptick that Oklahoma had, strictly because they can't give up more. I mean, I guess literally they could give up 60 to Oregon, so sure, in a very literal case that way, but realistically, it cannot be worse than what SC has done. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up this little emergency cast?
Yeah, I think you hope that you see players respond to this. The thing that we've been saying the whole time is that the players on defense, even though it's been very bad, it feels like they've been out there fighting and trying.
Hmm.
And I want to see them respond to this as much as possible. I would love to see some personnel changes, but again, because the people who were making the personnel decisions were the coaches that didn't get fired. So that's sort of difficult to say, but
Yeah,
I think really you have to just look forward to what comes next. I think this season, shockingly enough, USC is still alive in the Pac-12 title race. They have to pull off a miracle against Oregon, but who knows? That withstanding, I think I actually think this is a case of optimistic, Alicia. That notwithstanding, I think you look forward to Lincoln Riley having the biggest decision of his USC career so far coming up, where he has to get the defensive coordinator hire right.
yeah,
There's a narrative that Lincoln doesn't care about defense. There's a narrative that he will always just have a bad defense. There's narratives about all of that, but the saving grace for Lincoln Riley, the thing that should give you the most hope on this front is he has only ever hired one defensive coordinator. That was Alex Grinch.
yeah.
He stuck with Alex Grinch far too long.
At the time, though, too, Alex
That was a
Grinch
good
was a
hire.
big name. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a big name hire. It was a respected coordinator for Oklahoma to bring in. So now he needs to go out and make a very, very, very good hire and turn this program into a one that can compete for college football playoffs
yeah.
consistently. If you get this hire right, even with losing Caleb Williams, you can be a much better football team in 2024.
Yeah.
You also need to get this hire right in a way that they can immediately solve some of the problems that USC has with the same personnel that USC has, because
Mhm.
USC is going to be starting a first time starter at quarterback next year. You have to expect the offense to take a step back, and you need your defense to help settle things out a little bit. And it doesn't have to be Jim Leonard. It doesn't have to be Dave Aranda. It has to be somebody that you get the job, that you get it right. See what Chip Kelly did with Lynn
Yeah.
at UCLA. Though that one hire flipped
Well,
things on their head.
this is too why I don't think I understand the idea of, well, it's going to take next year is there's going to be such this big drop off and all this stuff. I don't think it needs to be that way. I really don't. Like, look at what UCLA did defensively by just making a coordinator switch Like, and look at the teams who play very good defense. Arizona State this year, both Arizona schools have played very good defense. Would you trade rosters defensively with those teams? I don't think you would. And so this idea that like SC is going to be unable to, improve defensively for a while or something, or like it's going to take a while for the defense to, be rebuilt. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think you can be considerably better just you can be considerably better by being just marginally better, right? Because the defense has been so bad as it is. But you can be better just by a better scheme, putting guys in the right spot. All of those things do the little part to make things better that way. And then offensively, I still don't buy into the idea that there's going to be this huge step back because that's never happened under Lincoln Riley. The offense has never taken a step back after losing a great coach. Like I know Oklahoma fans will be like, yeah, but Spencer Rattler, he wasn't good.
Yeah.
If Spencer Rattler is your example of a bad quarterback, a guy who won his last 13 games as a starter, then like I'm sorry, that you're speaking from a position of extreme strength.
Yeah.
So I think SC has the ability to be put in a position to have success next year, but they have to make the right DC hire. They have to get better on defense because if you pair better defense with this offense, you win a absolute ton of games, and everything
And
else ends up just being a bonus, much like the bonus bets that you can get over at DraftKings. Because Alicia, Trojan fans need to see that DraftKings is running a new promotion that you won't want to miss. New users can place a $5 bet and instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. And you'll also be rewarded with a separate no sweat single game parlay every single day. When you opt in, all you have to do is sign up with our code Reign of Troy. Using the code Reign of Troy not only gets you these great bonuses, but helps support this very podcast. So if you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure you use the code Reign of Troy to maximize your first bets and parlays. This offer, of course, only available to customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. What are you going to say?
I was going to interrupt your
I know, and I'm like,
there.
I'm not going to let it happen. I'm going to cook here.
What I was going to say is USC has fired the defensive coordinator. I do not care what happens over the next 2 weeks. The entire defensive staff needs to go. The entire defense. You need to start from scratch.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
That includes anyone who is a good recruiter, anyone who you like as a person, all of that. Entire defensive staff has to go. And a blank check needs to be given to Lincoln Riley to go find a defensive coordinator who can lift this program into contention. Because the most frustrating thing about this year, particularly, and the way that it is played out, is you look across the rest of college football, championship is there for the taking. And if USC had gotten the DC right in the first place, they would be right there.
Yeah.
So don't waste additional opportunities down the line.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. Sorry for the audio issues at the beginning. We have no idea what is going on with those things. But we will see what we can do to figure those out. But thanks everybody for joining us here on a Sunday for this emergency CarCast of sorts. But we will be back Monday tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, for our. Does the Washington game even matter now? What are we going to talk about? Or we got a comment from Lucas that says make a show on realistic DCs we can get. Maybe we're going to talk about that a little bit too. I don't know. We'll see what happens Monday with our Washington Fallout episode, and then we'll be back Wednesday to preview Oregon. Thursday with our bonus episode for our members only for right after dark, and then of course next Saturday night CarCast after USC and Oregon. Until then, though, we will see you. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.